before the Israelites could experience the blessings of the Promised Land, they were instructed to conquer its inhabitants, 7 wicked nations that included a race of giants. These adversaries and their descendants have significantly impacted Israel's history, and they are still trying to deter the divine purposes of the chosen people. We need to talk about the enemies in our land. Let's begin by reviewing a few things that we covered when we did the series on the maps concerning how the earth was divided between the 3 sons of Noah after the flood. Links will be in the description for that playlist. So this comes from Jubilees 8, and I encourage you to read the entire chapter. But we are told that Shem's portion was in the middle of the earth, which he should take as an inheritance for himself and for his sons for the generations of eternity. Then it says that all that is in the north is Japheth's, and all that is towards the south belongs to Shem. So the land belonging to Japheth is going to be on the opposite side of what was given to Shem. Shem was given the area that contained the Garden of Eden, Mount Sinai, and Mount Zion. We also need to remember that the earth was one landmass during that time. So if Shem was given the middle part of the earth, a good portion of his land would be in Africa, Eurasia, and portions of what is called North and South America today. The colder portions were given to Japheth. Now let's go back to the 18th chapter of Jubilees and look at verses 18 through 19. Noah rejoiced, it says, over the portion that was given to Shem, because he knew that the Garden of Eden is the Holy of Holies. Can we just pause right there for a second and consider that Adam was placed in the Holy of Holies on earth? What else was in Shem's portion? Mount Sinai, and it was located in the center of the desert, and also Mount Zion, and it was located in the center of the navel of the earth. It says these three locations were created as holy places facing each other. As we go on to chapter 10, verses 29 through 30 of the book of Jubilees, it tells us that Canaan, the son of Ham, didn't want the portion that was given to him. He saw the land of Lebanon to the river of Egypt, that it was very good, and he went not into the land of his inheritance to the west, that is, to the sea, and dwelt in the land of Lebanon, eastward and westward from the border of Jordan and from the border of the sea. So he stole the land that belonged to Shem. After he did this, his father and brothers rebuked him and tried to talk him out of it. They told him that he had settled in a land that was not his, but he refused to listen. And this is where we'll start talking about the enemies in our land, because almost from the beginning we have had usurpers in the portion given to Shem. Genesis 10 gives us the names of Canaan's sons. It says Canaan begot Sidon his firstborn and Heth, and I highlighted Heth's name because sources say he is the father of the Hittites. I'll share more on that later. But it goes on to name the rest of the sons of Canaan: the Jebusite, Amorite, Girgashite, Hivite, Archite, Sinite, Arvavite, Zemarite, and the Hamathite. Now verse 18 says, and afterward the families of the Canaanites were dispersed or spread abroad. And verse 19 tells us the border of the Canaanites was from Sidon as you go toward Gerar, as far as Gaza, then as you go toward Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, and Zeboim, as far as Lasha. We can also see that the name Heth was Kettite when we look at the table of nations in the Septuagint. You see here, verse 15, it says, "And Canaan begot Sidon, his firstborn," and instead of Heth, it says Kettite. One more corroborating source and then we'll move on. The McClinton and Strong Biblical Cyclopedia says Hittite, or rather Cathite, is usually in the plural form, and it lists them as the children of Heth. Now something happened with the children of Canaan, because by the time Abram was given the 400-year prophecy, you see the names of different clans in the land. We're looking at Genesis 15. The Most High told Abram that he brought him out of Ur of the Chaldeans to give him this land to inherit it. Abraham wanted to know how he would know that he would inherit it, considering he had no children. In verse 9, he's told to prepare a sacrifice. He brought all of the things he was told to bring. He cut them in two down the middle and placed each piece opposite the other, but he didn't cut the birds in two. Then during the day, he chased away the vultures trying to steal the meat. Verse 12 says, "When the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell on Abram, and behold, a horror and great darkness fell upon him. Then he said to Abram, Know certainly that your descendants will be strangers in a land that is not theirs, and will serve them, and they will afflict them 400 years. And also, the nation whom they serve I will judge. Afterward they shall come out with great possessions. Now as for you, you shall go to your fathers in peace. You shall be buried at a good old age. But in the 4th generation they shall return here, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete." It's telling us that the children of Israel could not go in and take the land until the sins of the Amorites had reached a certain threshold. But it seems that other forces were already coming in and either forcing the Canaanites to leave the land or be colonized in a land that didn't belong to them in the first place. As you continue reading that chapter, you're going to see in verse 17 that something else happened after the sun went down and it was dark. It says, "There appeared a smoking oven and a burning torch that passed between those pieces on the same day that the Most High made a covenant with Abram, saying," so now he's speaking to him again. He says, "To your descendants I have given this land from the river of Egypt to the great river, the river Euphrates. The Kenites, the Kenizzites, the Cadmonites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Rephaim, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Girgashites, and the Jebusites." Am I the only one thinking that there seems to be something missing from these last 3 verses? I mean, it says the Most High speaks to him and says, "I'm giving you this land." He tells him where it is. And verse 19 just starts naming the clans in the land, and the verse just cuts off after they are named. Let me know your thoughts on that in the comments. But we also see that some of the names are different. I listed the names of the sons of Canaan on the right, but in verse 19 you see the KKK, Kenites, Kenizzites, and Cadmonites. Then you see Hittites, Perizzites, Rephaim, Amorites, Canaanites, Girgashites, and Jebusites. So by this time giants are in the land. Now it's also interesting that we see Canaanites listed in verse 21, but the Hittites, Amorites, Girgashites, and Jebusites are also sons of Canaan. Why list one of the tribes as Canaanites if the Amorites, Girgashites, Jebusites, and Hittites are also sons of Canaan? There are ongoing debates about this, but one possibility may be that one of the sons named a child after Canaan to carry on that name. And that may be why, when you look at the original names on the right, you see Hamathite listed as a son of Canaan to carry on the name of Ham. Either way, only 5 sons of Canaan are listed out of the 10 names in verses 19 through 21. So did the Canaanites allow others to come in and share the land, or were they colonized? And what should we know about these other ites listed here? Now listen to the prophecy that was given through Moses. We find this in Deuteronomy 7:1 through 5. He says, "When the Most High Yah brings you into the land which you go to possess, and has cast out many nations before you, the Hittites and the Girgashites and the Amorites and the Canaanites and the Perizzites and the Hivites and the Jebusites, 7 nations, greater and mightier than you. And when the Most High Yah delivers them over to you, you shall conquer them and utterly destroy them. You shall make no covenant with them, nor show mercy to them, nor shall you make marriages with them. You shall not give your daughter to their son, nor take their daughter for your son, for they will turn your sons away from following me to serve other gods. So the anger of the Most High will be aroused against you and destroy you suddenly. But thus you shall deal with them. You shall destroy their altars, and break down their sacred pillars, and cut down their wooden images, and burn their carved images with fire." So by the time our ancestors were ready to go in and take the land, these 7 nations were the ruling powers. The Most High told them that those nations were mightier and greater than they were. Why? They had hybrids fighting with them and for them. Who did they send out to face King Saul? They sent Goliath. But they were no match for our people when they were empowered by the Most High. So he told our ancestors that he would give them the power to utterly destroy them. And then he warned them not to make any covenants with them. Don't show mercy to them. And that's where Christians would say, but that's not love. And that's why a lot of the religious leaders avoid the Old Testament. But he was warning them about these hybrids for their own good. He told them they were not to make marriages with them because they would turn their hearts away from the Most High. But did they listen? And we're still dealing with the fallout of our disobedience today. Now let's do some digging and get some additional information about the Hittites. They will be our focus for the remainder of the session. Various sources indicate that they were taken over and only a remnant remained. We're going to look at this source from F.F. Bruce entitled The Hittites and the Old Testament. This was written in 1947. The author is going to refer to various passages showing how Abraham and his descendants interacted with the Hittites. So he talks about how Abraham bought a plot of land from the children of Heth to bury Sarah. Esau married 2 Hittite women, to the grief of his mother, by the way. And there were Hittites in David's army, namely Uriah the Hittite. Solomon had Hittite women in his harem. And then he highlights the passage in Ezekiel where the prophecy is to Jerusalem. It says that the Amorite is her father and her mother was a Hittite. Now this is talking about the 2 sons of Canaan, since they were the first to inhabit that area before our people took that land over. So this author is saying that those Hittites I just read about are not the same people being referred to when we talk about the Hittite Empire. Here's why. He says, in the 3rd millennium BC, there lived in Central Asia Minor, in the valley of the river Halys, a people called the Kati, or Kati, who spoke a language which was neither Indo-European nor Semitic. They came early into contact with the inhabitants of the Euphrates-Tigris Valley, and Sargon and Naram-Sin are said to have led invading armies well into Asia Minor. Later, Assyrian trading colonies were established in Cappadocia to the east of the Cadi. I'll drop down. It says shortly afterwards, the Assyrians' lines of communication with Cappadocia were broken by the incursion of folk from the north into Upper Mesopotamia. That part right there is key. The folk invading came from where? The north. Who lived in the north? It says there is ample evidence of a great ethnic movement which sent various peoples from the highland zone north of the Fertile Crescent into the lands within and around the crescent. Now listen. It says soon after that date, the Indo-European Hittites appear in Asia. Can we just pause right there? So we see that different groups are bearing that name Hittite. And then we see a Semitic branch and an Indo-European branch. They believe these Indo-Europeans invaded because of a famine happening in Russia. It says, but it is important in that it brought the Indo-European speakers for the first time on the stage of history. This goes on to say the Indo-European Hittites seem to have entered Asia Minor from the Caucasus region. The monuments depict them as retaining their snowshoes even after they came to lower-lying country. It says the people with whom we are concerned settled among the Kati and established themselves in city-states. They soon assumed the name Kati themselves, at least as a territorial designation, but they call their own Indo-European language Nesili, after Nessos, one of their chief city-states. The language of the original Kati they continue to call Katili. So it says nowadays we conventionally call the language of the Indo-European invaders Hittite, and the language of the older population Proto-Hittite. So they basically assume the identity of another nation, and we are well familiar with them assuming names and the identity of others, aren't we? They colonize a nation, then name themselves after the people they conquered. And this is why there's so much confusion about the history, because the destroyers of peace that we talked about in the last session kept assuming the identity of others. This article entitled Hittites, Who Were the Hittites? Says there were two periods of Hittites. The first, from the 17th to the 12th century BCE, were the original Hittites, who are seemingly referred to in the Genesis stories about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The second, from the 9th to the 16th century BCE, are now called the Neo-Hittites by scholars and were present during the emergence of the Israelite kingdoms, including that of King David. Now let's look at this interaction between Abraham and the children of Heth who were still in the land. This comes from Genesis 23, 3 through 16. This is after Sarah had died. And Abraham, it says, stood up from before his dead and spoke to the sons of Heth, saying, I am a foreigner and a visitor among you. Give me property for a burial place among you, that I may bury my dead out of my sight. And the sons of Heth answered Abraham, saying to him, Hear us, my Lord. You are a mighty prince among us. Bury your dead in the choicest of our burial places. None of us will withhold from you his burial place, that you may bury your dead. Then Abraham stood up and bowed himself to the people of the land, the sons of Heth. And he spoke with them, saying, If it is your wish that I bury my dead out of my sight, hear me, and meet with Ephron the son of Zohar for me, that he may give me the cave of Machpelah, which he has, which is at the end of his field. Let him give it to me at the full price, as property for a burial place among you. Now Ephron dwelt among the sons of Heth, and Ephron the Hittite answered Abraham in the presence of the sons of Heth, all who entered at the gate of his city, saying, No, my lord, hear me. I give you the field and the cave that is in it. I give it to you in the presence of the sons of my people. My people. I give it to you, bury your dead. Then Abraham bowed himself down before the people of the land, and he spoke to Ephron in the hearing of the people of the land, saying, If you will give it, please hear me. I will give you money for the field. Take it from me, and I will bury my dead there. And Ephron answered Abraham, saying to him, My lord, listen to me. The land is worth 400 shekels of silver. What is that between you and me? So bury your dead. And Abraham listened to Ephron, and Abraham weighed out the silver for Ephron, which he had named in the hearing of the sons of Heth, 400 shekels of silver, currency of the merchants. Now you tell me, who are we talking about here? Indo-Europeans? I don't think so. So by the time our people were ready to take the land, there were other usurpers there in addition to the Canaanite remnants who had stolen it and named it after themselves. We're going to dig deeper into some of the usurpers, beginning with the Hittites. Let's look at excerpts from this book called The Hittites by Dr. Leopold Messerschmidt. This was written in 1903. Let's start with the appearance of the Hittites, and this is according to the testimony of their own monuments, according to the author. Look at the picture on the right. You all, there should be no doubt in your mind who this is talking about here, but let's read it, and he's going to make it very clear. He says, Anthropological investigations, especially skull measurements among the modern, remember that word, modern inhabitants of Asia Minor, where traces of more ancient peoples are still evident, have made it probable that the Hittites, the modern Armenians, and a section of the Ish people belong to one and the same race. Their distinctive traits are very short heads, dark eyes, dark hair, and long aquiline noses. This last is the most striking characteristic of the monuments. It says the Egyptian monuments represent the Hittites with longish, slightly curved noses, sharply retreating foreheads, projecting cheekbones, short, round, beardless chins, and fair complexions. The hair is long and thick and falls in 2 locks over the shoulders. On the Hittite monuments, only one plaited lock is visible, while many of the men wear long beards. The hair of the women is arranged like that of the men. Let's take a look at a few things and then we'll go back to the book. I found this newsletter from University of Chicago, and it was issued as confidential for members and friends in February of 1983. The writer is Hans Guterbach. He says the Hittites were a people who lived in Anatolia during the 2nd millennium BC. He says knowledge of their language, history, and civilization is of relatively recent date. The name Hittites is taken from the Old Testament, he says, but the biblical passages do not give much information about the people. The Greeks knew nothing about the Hittites, not even the name. He says it was the discovery of thousands of clay tablets near the Turkish village Bag Haskell, 150 miles east of Ankara, between 1906 and 1907, which made possible the recovery of this forgotten people. He goes on to say, that the tablets are inscribed in the cuneiform script of Babylonia, and some of the texts are actually written in the Babylonian language. From these, it became immediately clear that the site was the capital of the country Hatti. But the majority of the tablets was in an unknown language. They could be read since the script was known, but the language had to be deciphered. How this was achieved has been told many times and would take up too much space here. He says the Czech Assyriologist Bedřich Horanci made the breakthrough during the First World War. His results were published in book form in 1917. After the war in the 1920s, German scholars took up his work and laid the ground for what came to be known as Hittology. This science article is asking the question, who first spoke Indo-European? DNA points to Eurasian herders 6,400 years ago. It says today half the world's population speaks an Indo-European language whose descendant tongues include English, Russian, Greek, Bengali, and dozens more. So it's no surprise that generations of scholars have obsessed over the mystery of where Indo-European originated and who spoke it first. So the original stock of Canaanites spoke a Semitic language. That would have been one of the main things separating them from the Indo-European group, and also the appearance. But of course, over time, they whited out the original group. It goes on to say the search for Indo-Europeans' origins has a dark past. Infamously, it played a part in Nazi and other racist ideologies that hypothesized a pure Aryan race was responsible for spreading Indo-European languages from a single ancient homeland. So they wanted to find the Indo-Europeans' origins, and they found it. They discovered a truth they didn't want to know. Hittite is the oldest Indo-European language. This article from Texas Liberal Arts Linguistics Research Center says, this information had remained completely unknown during the period in which Indo-European linguistics developed because its records are on clay tablets that were excavated only at the end of the 19th century. Now let's go back to the book. It says fantastic monsters such as sphinxes and griffins are a characteristic feature of Hittite religious representations. The sphinxes have lion-like bodies with human heads and are usually winged. One remarkable relief shows a sphinx with a lion's head in the natural position and a human head set upright on the neck. The griffin has usually a human body but the head and wings of a vulture. It says the specimens of Hittite sculpture are, as far as we can ascertain, for the most part of a religious character, and many of them have already been mentioned. One of the most remarkable among them is a rock-cut figure at Bog-Haskoi. The head is human and is surmounted by a pointed tiara, but the rest of the body is formed by a combination of 4 lions. Of the 2 which form the breast, only the front parts are visible, and the heads, turned outwards on the right and left, have from the distance the appearance of the stumps of arms. The others, shown in full, hang their heads downwards and turn their backs outwards, right and left. These represent the body of the figure, which has, instead of legs, straight lines converging at the base. The double eagle, which occurs so frequently, is remarkable not only as another example of the creation of fantastic monsters from the bodies of animals, but also as constituting a link between Hittite antiquity and modern times. It is the direct ancestor of the Austrian double eagle, which after being adopted in the East by the Seljuk sultans appeared in Europe in 1345 in the escutcheon of the German emperors. Here you can see a relief. It's a religious procession, and they had a pantheon of gods. Here you see figures standing on stones, some on animals, some are standing on men. And on the right you see one standing on a double-headed eagle. Here's another view. It's a close-up. But the iconography on the seals and reliefs depicted their gods in human or animal form, or standing on top of animals that symbolize their power. So they're standing on these special stones called Huasi stones, and they served as physical embodiments of the deities, making the divine presence tangible and accessible to the Hittites. Now let's look at the genetics. This is from Khazaria.com. It says genetic studies tell us that the Anatolian Turks are a mix of West Asian, Central Asian, and Northeast Asian ancestral elements, but primarily West Asian. This means that Turks have deep roots in Turkey and are descended from peoples like the Armenians and the Hittites, who once lived in large numbers in that land. Here you see the Y-DNA haplogroup distributions among the Anatolian Turks. We see that E1B1B is on the list. As we read earlier, 2 of the women Esau married were Hittites. The highest concentration here is J2 at 24%. The next highest is R1B at 16%. And then there's G and E1B1B tied at 11%. So again, we're talking about a mongrel race because they went about colonizing and repopulating those areas with their bloodline. Here is what was published in the PMC regarding the genetic structure of the Turkish population. It says it reveals high levels of variation and admixture. They are a mongrel race, plain and simple. The article says, the results show that the genetic structure of present-day Anatolia was shaped by historical and modern-day migrations, high levels of admixture, and inbreeding. We observed that modern-day Turkey has close genetic relationships with the neighboring Balkan and Caucasus populations. Now, if you'll remember in the book we read about the Hittites, it talked about the 2-headed eagle. The double-headed eagle is not just a symbol, it serves as the link between Hittite antiquity and modern times. So we're going to look at excerpts from this article from Ancient Origins entitled The Double-Headed Eagle, an Everlasting Symbol of Power. It says the double-headed eagle has been a popular symbol associated with the concept of a powerful empire. Most contemporary uses of the symbol are exclusively associated with its use by the Byzantine Empire and the Greek Orthodox Church. However, the double-headed eagle has been in use for thousands of years, way before the Greeks identify it with the Byzantine Empire and the Orthodox religion. It says the eagle was a common symbol representing power in ancient Greek city-states. In Greek mythology, there was an implication of a dual eagle concept in the tale that Zeus let 2 eagles fly east and west from the ends of the world, with them eventually meeting in Delphi, thus proving it to be the center of the earth. According to many historians, however, the 2-headed eagle appears to be of Hittite origin. Early examples of the symbol come from the Hittite Empire in central Anatolia, where 2-headed eagles can be found on seals and also on sculptures. Interestingly, some of those sculptures also have other beasts in their claws and appear to be the symbol of the ruler standing on it. Thus, the two-headed eagle could have been the symbol of the tribe, of the ruler, but also of the ruler himself. After the Hittite two-headed eagles, there is a gap of almost 2 millennia to be filled. In the meantime, the emblem of the supreme commander in the Hellenistic world was a monstrous head, being the head of the army personified by Medusa or Nike, the goddess of victory. It goes on to say it was Christianity that ultimately arrogated the symbol. Why was this symbol so important? It says the double-headed eagle gradually became the absolute symbol of orthodoxy, symbolizing the unity between the Byzantine Orthodox Church and state, which was governed by the principle of symphonia. Thus, the symphony between the civil and the ecclesiastical functions of Byzantine Orthodox society. In addition to that, it is pointing to their origins. What we're seeing is the fulfillment of Daniel's prophecy. Indeed, the last beast colonized the world. They attempted to white it out. Let's wrap up with this from Holman Bible Dictionary. It's talking about the Hittites and Hivites and referring to a non-Semitic minority within the population of Canaan who frequently became involved in the affairs of the Israelites. Particularly, it's focusing on them being called uncircumcised in Scripture. And it says it would suggest an Indo-European rather than Semitic origin. So they came from elsewhere. There is so much more to share on this topic, but we'll end it here and pick up here next time. But if this message has been a blessing to you, please hit the like and share it. You're also welcome to subscribe if you have not already done so. We normally upload messages on Sunday mornings at 8:30 a.m. Yah willing. Join me next time.